Let me just say a few things about each of them, and if you'll give me a moment to, permit me to read, even though I know everyone here, I want to give them due diligence. So Allison Johnson is probably the person I've known the longest and have such deep and great admiration and love for, as do most of the people that have worked for her, from what I can tell, because I've worked with them as well. Allison is the founder of West, a new kind of strategy and creative accelerator based in San Francisco that's focused on introducing new companies, products, and ideas to the world. Prior to West, she ran marketing at Apple for 6+ years, where she was responsible for launching some of the most iconic products and campaigns of our time. Allison has been at the center of the industry's most historic turns, and she doesn't do things like this. So I am so lucky to have her here. She doesn't like talking about herself. Okay, Caroline Donahue, oh my gosh, warm place in my heart for Caroline. I've had the pleasure of knowing her for just maybe 2 or 3 years. And she is just, I thought of her immediately when I thought of this panel, because Caroline, she grooves the path that is uniquely her own. As you can see, just from the way she looks, she's so alive and sparkly, and she will share her very grounded point of view about the world today, or how she runs her world. Caroline is the Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer and Sales Officer at Intuit. She also leads Intuit's sales and marketing efforts in social media, mobile, PR, and the web marketing, as well as overseeing the company's corporate communications in 6 countries around the world. All of those things she does in 6 countries, right? Prior to that, she worked in sales and channel management positions at Apple and Next. I want to say one thing about Intuit and why it's so great that we have someone from Intuit here today. Intuit has 6 out of 14 women on their CEO staff. Yeah. That's almost 50%. So, I mean, we got to look at what are they doing right. So cool. Their women's network is thriving. It was the first of 11 diversity networks inside Intuit, and they have chapters all over the world. My next esteemed panelist is my newest friend, Loretta Walker. I met Loretta when I went to the Gender Equality Challenge that was put on by the Office for the Status of Women in San Francisco. Did you know we have one? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the only city in the United States that has, that I know of, that has an office on the status of women, which is so incredible, right? So she stood out for me because of her presentation and her spark and her commitment to women. AT&T has 10,000 women in their women's organization, women's group. So, and she knows deeply and in the details of what they all are up to and doing, and they just opened a new one in EMEA, I think, and so very, very excited to have Loretta. Loretta is the Vice President of External Affairs at AT&T. She heads their California's public policy and philanthropic initiatives, which represents 7 million people in population. And she's served as a VP/GM for consumer marketing, alternate channel sales, operations. She's worked in a lot of different areas, and we're so lucky to have her here today. And last but not least, who is tweeting, of course, Lisa. Oh my God, Lisa's been on my wish list for one of our events for a really long time. When I, years ago, saw her in an interview and just thought, that girl, I got to get her on here, this woman. I guess girl isn't the right word. So Lisa is BlogHer's CEO and one of 3 co-founders. She works across the entire community of 100 million women reached every month to advocate for bloggers, partners, products, and events that fulfill BlogHer's vision. Lisa and her BFF co-founders created a scalable tech platform, which is a $39 million business that, get this, attracts more visitors each month than Fox News, ABC News, and NBC News.
I see that.
Yeah. And I love this that I heard her say in an interview. She said, we are the Lucy Ricardos and the Irma Bombecks and the Oprahs of our lives. Aren't we?
That's great.
So with that, let's just move on to hearing from these bright women. What I want to do is just ask a few questions, and then really we're just going to be very relaxed about how how we go. Everyone takes as long as you'd like, you know, and then we'll see about 5 minutes or so, and then, you know, as long as you'd like. But I just realized I should probably say that. And then our friend in the front row will tell us when time is up, and she'll give us cues. So, who would like to go first? Lisa, will you go first?
Okay.
Okay. Will you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a leader? And I'm going to ask another question about that after, but just go ahead and start with, what was your journey to becoming a leader?
Well, right in this moment, it's the journey of grappling with being called a leader. I mean, I just frankly have to say, I'm 47 years old, and when I was growing up, I'm sort of the cusp of the Title IX generation. The language of leadership was not that current. And it wasn't just that I grew up in Missoula, Montana. I just think generationally, it wasn't a conversation that we had. And I think that that's one of the reasons right now I'm so grateful to the, you know, Sheryl Sandbergs and the many journalists in the room and people I know who have started to talk about leadership, because I firmly believe our next frontier is to start having women take credit for the leadership we show in our everyday lives. We shouldn't have had to run a company or start a company or be at the C-level to be leaders, right? So my co-founders and I started Blog Her after careers in journalism and telecommunications, on Elisa's part, journalism for me and Jory, because we wanted to answer the question, where are the women who blog? And I think we became leaders because we were a little bit fed up. Mm-hmm. We were really tired of this question. One blogger said at the time, it's kind of like being the Who that Horton never hears. Ridiculous. There were millions of us blogging, and it was turning into another same 5 white guys on CNN, mm-hmm, right, that I was used to as a journalist. So we decided, we frankly became fed up. We came together, we collaborated, and we asked the community what they wanted. 2005, 305 women showed up in Santa Clara to answer that question, and when they showed up, we were blown away by not only the quality of their blogs, their writing, their photography, their video blogging, early audio blogging, but the extraordinary reach. The woman who volunteer microphone wrangled for us the first year was Elise Bauer, the founder of SimplyRecipes.com. At the time, she was already bigger than Katie plus Martha plus Oprah. And as a former Women.com editor-in-chief and executive producer, we couldn't miss that opportunity. So when it became clear they wanted to not just network and come together, but they wanted to be paid for their writing, we started this company. And we've paid out, from 2009 to 2012, we paid women $25 million, 5,000 women in advertising revenue, shares, and work for hire.
That's awesome.
So that, for us, leadership has been getting stuff done. And I think it's only now that I would even use that term. So I'm not a reluctant leader. I just never even knew to use the term.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Awesome. Loretta, do you want to answer that question?
You know, and my story is a little unorthodox from the standpoint of being in corporate America and not following the traditional path. I remember my perception of being a manager or leader was keeping my head down, getting things done. And I was asked to be on a task force, and I was the lowest level manager on the task force, so I was interacting with a lot of officers, VPs, and little did I know that it was going to be the turning point in my life. So I pretended like I was one of them. And so I started asking the questions, and this was at a turning point for our company because we were trying to really determine profitability for our products and services. You may think of AT&T as a regulated company, but we really are concerned about profitability. And it was kind of profound to be the one that was asking naive questions that made people think. And I have to tell you that I gained a lot of mentors, sponsors, and lifelong friends because of that interaction and that opportunity. And it really led the way I came through the company from the standpoint of being in the gray area a lot, taking assignments that no one else wanted. And I remember distinctly asking, why am I getting all of these kinds of assignments? And one of my dear mentors told me that it was character building. And yeah, and so, but what I didn't realize was that I was getting a lot of skill sets that a lot of my cohorts weren't getting. And when the company started making the change in this transformation and being concerned about innovation and technology, I was sitting there with all the right skill sets. And it was so profound to me that I started having people say, oh, put Loretta in that job. She likes being in the gray area. And that was most of my career. And so what it taught me was that, you know, I need to share this with others because a lot of people lose track of what's happening when mentors and sponsors are pulling them along. You're not always told what people are doing for you. And I have people here from AT&T, from Women of AT&T, and from APCA and Community Network that we have these massive mentoring circles throughout our company for 11 employee resource groups that do just that. We spell it out for the employees that are there. And I'm really proud to be a part of it because Nicole and a lot of them are here today, will tell you we have some very candid discussions about what do you mean you're not taking that job when someone is asking you, pulling you into the job? I don't understand that. And so my intent is to be a leader that is collaborative, regardless of levels, and to make sure that people don't make the same mistakes that I've made.
Great. Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Caroline, do you want me to repeat the question?
I think it had something to do with leadership.
Yeah, like how'd you get there?
Yeah, I was just thinking I just handed Wendy my watch, and I flew back from Australia yesterday, and I can't remember if I changed the time zone.
It's okay, just watch it.
Yeah. So let me tell you a few stories about my leadership journey. When I grew up on the East Coast, and the only thing I ever wanted to be when I was a kid was a librarian, and later on a writer. But I used to follow the librarian around every day, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever think about leadership until I was one many years later. So I think similar to Lisa's story. But I have a few people that inspired me on the way to where I am today that are really important in my life and created those pivotal moments for me. And the first of them is my mother. Now, I was an English major in college, but my mother had been a math major. And I graduated from college and got a job at IBM as a programmer. And she was one of the first female programmers at IBM. In fact, you know, talk about bringing things back. They paid her to get her hair and nails done. Whoa! I'm going to try to get up to 2. It's really good. It's quite not there yet. But my mother stopped working when she had her 4 kids in the 50s, and she had no regrets. But she always said to me, Caroline, the world is your oyster. And, oh, you can't hear me? Can you guys hear me? So she always said to me, the world is your oyster, and go follow your dreams and do whatever you want to do. And so one of my big inspirations is having the independence and the decision-making that my mother didn't have. And in fact, this year for Christmas, she gave me a little plate that said, the world is your oyster, and it reminded me of that. So she was the first for me, just sort of living that career that she didn't have. The second was my first boss at Apple Computer. So being an English major, I went to New York City to be in publishing, which is what lots of English majors do. And somehow, lucky, ended up working as a sales rep at Apple in 1984, right after the Mac was introduced, and Ellison was probably there. I know Karen was there at the time, too. At one point in 1986, 2 years in, I was a sales rep in the city, and the coveted job of district manager for Apple New York came up. And tons of people applied for the job, and at the 11th hour, a friend of mine said, well, you should apply too, and I threw my hat in the ring, and I ended up getting the job. And shortly thereafter, I tried to get out of it. I had total buyer's remorse. I was 26 years old. I'd never managed a person in my life. I had been a cocktail waitress, a wannabe librarian, and a sales rep for a couple years, and that was pretty much it. And most of the people on my team were a lot older than I was, and half of them had applied for the job. And my boss at the time, Jim Saskell, said to me, because I said, I think I want out. I don't know what I did this for, you know, blah, blah.
And he said, you know what, Carolyn, let me tell you something about leadership. It actually has nothing to do with the title on your card or that you're officially managing these people or the corner office. It's all about earning the respect. And it's all about listening. And that's why we hired you in this job. So for years, my mantra and the way I lead today is still totally about listen to people, remove barriers, and earn the respect, and try to get everybody rowing in the same direction. And so I never dreamed that I would manage 1,000 people. In fact, I've never even along the way thought, ooh, now I want a bigger job or whatever. But I've always just tried to keep that mantra, and I've really had fun doing it.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you. It's really great. Thank you.
And I hope that at some point, if we have any entrepreneurs in this room, somebody will invent a microphone for women that doesn't feel like it's sticking into the small of your back and driving up your shirt. I've thought that for years, so we should brainstorm about that.
Work on that. I agree. That's great. Does your laugh work?
I'm not sure. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. Okay, good. It works okay. I was a little bit worried about it's a girl shirt, so yeah, it wasn't designed for men. But okay.
Yeah, so do you want to share a little bit about your leadership journey?
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back around and ask you two and Allison again, what was a defining moment for you or a story you can tell about what really crafted your unique style of leadership? So you can either include that in your story or not, but whatever you want to say.
It was definitely the School of Hard Knocks. This was, it's not so different, I don't think, than Loretta's journey in the sense that I tended to find myself, or maybe I would seek out those kind of opportunities inside the companies I was working for that required change. I'm a revolutionary. I was always in, at companies like IBM, like Apple, Netscape, at various moments in time, sort of when these companies were going through important sort of pivotal changes. And I gravitated to those opportunities, and typically people thought that I was nuts. Like, what are you doing that? Like, IBM in the internet business? Are you kidding me? They have nothing to offer. Okay. So here we go. And then I think at HP, at that particular time, it was an incredible battle for kind of the future of the company. I worked under Carly's regime. Going to Apple, we'll talk about that a little bit. But it was always sort of taking those opportunities where nobody else was really interested in going into them because they were high risk. And for me, that was really interesting. That's the kind of work that I wanted to do. And so, I would say that creating, who knew that this little, tiny group of communications people could give IBM a future? In the context of IBM was struggling and it needed to figure out what it was going to do in the days of the internet. We launched a campaign called e-business that was extremely fraught with inside the company, and this tiny little team turned this great big company around, and that gave me incredible courage and fortitude. I knew where that came from, and we had to bet our jobs. Megan, who's in the audience with us today. We would have to bet our jobs. Are you sure that this is a direction that IBM should go in? Are you absolutely sure? Because this is going to cost you your job if you're wrong. And I'm like, amen, bring it on. So it was, taking those kinds of opportunities. The battle at HP. Here's a story of women courage. We went into that particular major kind of turn in the company's future. It was led by Carly. There were a board of directors that included the family who were involved, the Hewletts and the Packards. There was the head of Goldman Sachs and Wilson Sonsini folks, and the kind of the masters of the financial universe engaged. And the family, 9/11 happened, the stock market crashed. Everybody got nervous about whether or not this was the right thing to do. Carly saw it as her responsibility to lead the company, to have a future, because the printing business was not going to sustain it. And she had the courage and the conviction to do this and to see it through, even when the family said, we're not interested in doing this. And there was a giant proxy battle, and it was really scary. And none of us had any experience fighting proxy battles against really big bullies, but we followed our gut. We did what we thought was right. I learned in that particular moment that people who were doing the right things for the right reasons in the right way would get the right outcome. A big life lesson. Yeah. And that was another kind of moment in leadership. Follow your convictions, do the right thing in the right way for the right reasons, and you will get the right outcome. And I remember, these big, powerful Wall Street guys getting extraordinarily scared by the fact that, oh my God, there's going to be a proxy battle. And for those of us who were sitting in the trenches, the little people, were like, okay, now we can win, because you know what? Nobody wants to be about the past. Everybody wants to be about the future. We've got an opportunity to win. That was the moment at which I thought, we can do this. And I saw Carly come to the game every day with incredible courage and conviction when these guys were scared to death. And I was just like, she has more cojones than anybody in this room. So I saw woman power big time in that particular life lesson. And then the going to the Apple part of it. That Steve Jobs is a huge character. Huge. He's a force.
Didn't he personally call you and invite you to come on?
So I was at HP, and it was at the point at which Apple was trying to figure out how we're going to bring the iPod into the PC world outside of the Macs. How do we sort of restore Apple, or bring Apple into a bigger marketplace? And so he asked HP to help him with that by introducing its version of the iPod. He happened to like the marketing that we were doing better than the work that his team was doing. So he asked me to come on board. And it was one of those calls where he said, this is like God, actually, saying, he had just recovered. He was in the process of recovering from kind of the first bout of cancer. And he said, look, if I get hit by a truck, I want somebody sitting in that chair who I trust, and that's you. I went inside, and I spent 2 years basically being completely, sidelined. I'm going to be honest. I went in, and it was a really hard mountain to climb. You had to earn his trust. And that was something that I, had to work very hard to do. And it was a very difficult situation. This is when this one came into my life. How do you show up, game face, every single day and fight for what you believe in with a guy who can fight tougher than you can, with a much bigger stick? And it was tough. It was a really, really, really tough job. I learned more than I could ever possibly learn, PhD times 10. But that taught me, it brought me to a place where I had to summon my own courage and conviction and remember that I really was good at what I was doing, because I wasn't quite sure. I had to be a heat shield to 600 people who sat in a building who had to, make creative work under very tough conditions, and that was an incredible, another kind of incredible life experience. In many respects, I wouldn't wish it on anyone in the room. In other respects, it was an incredible privilege, and I pinched myself. I pinched myself every single day I went to that, the Knights of the Round Table, and got to sit in every single conversation with him. He's an incredible genius. He is an incredible human being, but it was a really hard job. But those are the things that I think in the context of leadership, summoning your courage. I would say that was, bravery was the thing that kind of brought me through all of those moments. So that's the journey.
Wow, thank you. Wonderful. And so just the two of you, do you have any defining moments, because they shared theirs? Just what was it that shaped the way you lead today?
The thing with me is that when I came in from out of college, I wanted to take over the world, and I'll be done with it by 3 years, is what I told myself. But the reality of it is that when you go into an environment, you become a part of that fabric. And I remember saying, "Oh, I need to try it this way," and quickly I say within 6 months, decided that that didn't work for me. And so with me, it's being comfortable with who I am, an efficient speaker, no flowery words, cutting right to the chase, and being comfortable with the outcome of that.
Finding your own voice, your own
exactly.
unique voice, right? And not trying to change yourself into something that you're not.
Yes, because that's the space that I ended up in, and I was very comfortable being there. If I had taken a different route, trying to be meek and mild and all these other things.
That you saw around you.
Exactly. I would have never ended up where I was.
It's awesome. It's great. Thank you. Lisa.
I think that what was critical for me, just two quick things, one professional and one personal. I was a political and business reporter who came up through print here in the Bay Area. I broke a series using the Freedom of Information Act on the FAA and got recruited to CNN. And in 1997, I left for the internet. And when I left for the internet, people were saying women would never go online in large numbers.
Duh.
Right? And this was fascinating to me.
It's amazing.
Because in the same year, I also became a single mother. And I had a 1.5-year-old, and my marriage ended. And I thought the answer that women would never go online was ridiculous. I began to apply classic journalistic principles of applying metrics to what you observe qualitatively, and nothing was matching up. So women have been the majority of voters in the United States since 1964. We've shown up at the polls in greater numbers than men since 1980. And we were told we didn't want to vote. And after that, we didn't want to drive, right? So there was a disconnect. So certainly in my life, the only 5 minutes I had to myself was online. So it was really fascinating because all along I have been watching, and we're going to hear this afternoon from people like Sharon Mears and others who really know their numbers, the disconnect between what women have actually been doing and controlling with regard to disposable income, decision-making with regard to everything from automotive to electronics to telecommunications, a total mismatch with the stereotypes put forth for us. I see it happening right now, as we were just discussing, in engineering and STEM areas. So the key leadership for me, or the moment when I really had an aha, was when I found that the data weren't matching up with what I was being told about my reality, and there were business opportunities there. So when the three of us decided to answer the question, where are the women who blog, and start an entirely new kind of publishing business, we were asked 3 questions. Number one, why you 3? Because we were not household names. We're 3 nobodies from nowhere, right? We are. And none of us has an Ariana-style approach to the media or personality, and she's fantastic and a friend. But that's just what we were behind the camera girls. And so that was one thing that was really interesting. And number 2 was putting the metrics out front have helped us win across the board. It's really different, the kinds of conversations I have now with men on Madison Avenue or here on Santo Road because of the power of this community. And so going on with your metrics is just critical. I guess the last thing I would say is that I would never have gotten out of my comfort zone and gotten out in front of some of these businesses if I hadn't become a single mother. You know, my son has been a huge, thank you. He's been a huge inspiration, and you know, women like Monica Johnson and Lisa Stromberg, who are here today, who helped me go through that process, have really helped me get out in front and do the things I was wildly uncomfortable doing, from public speaking to raising venture capital. So I would just encourage you all to be as scared as possible.
I thought you were going to say to be a mom. It's not for the faint-hearted, is it?
Well, you know a little something about
I'm learning quickly. Wow, thank you. Those are amazing answers, all of you. The next question I want to ask is, Deborah Spar, she's the president of Barnard College, has a recent book out on perfectionism, which you should get if you haven't seen it yet. She said that the phrase, having it all, should be banished from our vernacular. So is balance a myth, and how do you reconcile the trade-offs? Do you want to start? Yeah. Oh.
I don't know if I'm the right place to start.
You're the right person to start with.
I have no balance. Here's why. because I throw myself passionately at what I do, and I become so obsessed with it and focused on it. And I have raised 2 great kids, and I have a great husband, and we have a great life. So in that respect, I don't feel like I left anything behind, but I was not the soccer mom. I was not the PTA mom. I had no way to relate to moms like that. And so, I have to say, this one keeps trying to get me to meditate, and I try. I try to spend time with myself and sort of finding that balance in life. But I am so in love with what I'm doing. That is all I want to do. So.
Yeah, yeah, and when you find that thing that you love, I don't think it's as much about balance as it is about integration. Actually, I heard Padma Warrior say this. It's about, it's not so much trading off or thinking, there are sacrifices, there are definitely sacrifices, but if you have something that you really, really love, maybe you integrate in those really important rituals, because I'll get to that in a minute, but I think that's what we are all confronted with, because as we come into our passion and our purpose, it's hard. We cannot be the perfectionist mom, too. We can't be the perfectionist anything. We have to give each other permission to just do it the way it's going to work for us. So I see you thriving, and I think that's amazing.
You know, it's funny because I also don't like the term "have it all" or whatever, but I believe that whatever generation I was born in, whether it's this one or my mother's or, before that, I would have been a really busy, passionate woman, because that's what I am, similar to you, Allison. I love doing lots of things, and I sign up for lots of things. And, this week I have 3 women's events going on in the evenings, and that's what keeps me motivated and in my DNA. I also am a single parent, a sole parent of twin girls, and that's also kept me really grounded. I work at a company, and I have for 19 years, which is very dinosauric in Silicon Valley. Most people move around a lot. And I've been really blessed to work at a place that gives me lots of balance. And I do take it, and it's hard. It's really, really hard, because I want to do even more than I do. So for me, it's all about trying to find the time to slow down and do that meditation and stuff, which is why we all have Wendy to help us do these things. But I do love what I do.
Can I ask you what dinosauric means, just because I'm not sure I know what you meant by that?
Well, in Silicon Valley, most people don't work for companies for 19 years.
Oh, that. Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
And I have, and part of it's because Intuit's such a great place for work-life balance for men and women.
Yeah, okay. And both of you have pointed out that, doing your passion is a sustenance. It's a food. It's a necessary food, and more, I think, for us as women these days. So, yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I probably made up that word, by the way. Since we have journalists on the thing, should we keep it? Yeah.
It has never been an either-or situation for me. I have a son, my husband, family, and I calendar my family commitments like I calendar my work commitments. Now, there are some things that I will not calendar, like I am not a cook. I don't find joy in that. But I will show up at the principal's office when my son is not in alignment with what I think he should be in alignment with. What for me, it's what I call bleed over. I'm very comfortable with, because of what I do. I get great joy in talking with customers about what they want from AT&T, and that can happen any time of the day. Because it helps us with being innovative and making this transformation the way we want to make it. The other thing is that we're at a time point where it's important for women to be in corporate America or in this space of being a leader, and so the resources are just bountiful. We have a women's leadership council at AT&T, and they have initiatives that are focused on educating supervisors, male or female, on what it's like to supervise a female. Unheard of. Wow. The resources are now available to us, so that when you're questioning how do I have what I want and still be a credible person within the company, there's some place to find it. So that's what I think is what gives me joy, is making sure that the things that I want to do, I'm available for it.
That's awesome. Thank you. And you hit on, HBR agrees with you. In their study about what balance is or is not, they said that the two primary things are the making choices and sacrifices and have help, somebody to cook when you don't want to. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Lisa.
I think these are all great answers. I would just add that don't we have some privileged choices?
Yeah.
We're so lucky.
Wow.
We're so lucky. And I think that
thank you.
On International Women's Day, and thank you for pulling us all together, I can't stop reading about what's happening internationally. And I think a lot about what's happening right here in Silicon Valley, where we've built this fantastic culture of achievement, and look at what we've done, and look at the companies you all represent. And yet, we're on the precipice of becoming an environment of super haves and super have-nots,
right?
Or haves not. So I'm worried about that.
Yeah.
I fear that, and I see that as a challenge for this incredible group to take on over the next 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Do you accept?
Yes.
Yeah, the reason I totally resonate that, and also with what Loretta said about that, because being willing to play in the rules of corporation. Many women are leaving corporations to go create organizations of their own. And as you've read, that's wonderful. And at the same time, there seems to be a lid on how big they can get because of the venture capital available to them. Inside corporations, if we stay, those of us that can stay, or at least affect it as a consultant or however you do, we can change the rules so that business is done in a way that supports women flourishing, which is what we all want. So I just think that both of you pointed to that. It's like, we may have to dig down a little bit to our courage and our fortitude to make these changes that we really all need in order for us to take our rightful leadership positions in the places of every part of the world. So, and I still want to say, as an executive coach, I am a proponent of not letting, this guy talked about David Sedaris. You've probably heard him. He's really funny. A brilliant writer. One of his writers or friends said that there are think about balance as 4 burners on a stove. And at any one time, you really can't let 2 of them be cooking too hot. Because if one of them will boil over, it could ruin the whole thing. But the one burner you really can't let boil over is your health burner. Exactly. Because everything else is ruined for that. And I can speak from personal experience. You do not want to let that one burn over. So just wanted to say that. Okay, so the last, I have 2 more questions if we have time. Good, we have 10 more minutes, that's awesome. Is what is available to us today as women in the 21st century that wasn't before? I mean, all of you have the breadth of being able to look back and see, even at the beginnings of your career, what's different now? What are the opportunities now that you see for women that you can point at and inspire us by? You want to go first?
Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit of a heretic in this room. I don't subscribe to the point of view, I think you were talking about this just a moment ago. I don't subscribe to the point of view that success in business needs to be defined by leaning in and taking that promotion or asking for that raise. Or it's like, I think that doesn't feel particular. Being defined by the current male view of what success is not my view of success.
Okay.
And I don't. So I coach my daughter to do what she can do wholeheartedly and where she wants to contribute, and to look for words to define her success by those kinds of metrics. Is she fulfilled? Is she doing the work that she wants to do? Is she having the impact and making the contribution that she wants to make? So I want us to teach our generation, I don't subscribe to the view that that's liberating for women to live in that power structure. That is not liberating. So in the context of where I want us from a women's liberation perspective is to liberate men and women to live in a different power structure and to define our success by what we're contributing and how fulfilled we are and our impact in the world and our contribution. And those, to me, are the new definitions of success. And those are feminine. Those are feminine powers. That is a feminine power structure. So let's change the power structure and then really liberate women and men, frankly.
Yeah, that's great.
I think one of the things you said, Wendy, is about sort of what's going to happen in the 21st century. Well, I'm really hoping we get a woman president in 2016, you know? But there's great women's movements all over the world, and I couldn't agree more with what Lisa said about, we are privileged here. And there's such great woman stuff going on here, and it's not perfect everywhere, and there's still struggle. But the movement globally is really great. I don't know if anyone here saw Girl Rising, Half the Sky. Mm-hmm. There's foundations and non-for-profits. I feel like, and Wendy, you said this, there's women sort of rising all over the place.
Exponentially.
And in our lifetime, I think we will see change. The question, I think, is how can we affect that and what more can we do? And I even struggle with that because, I'm in a million women's groups and I try to do what I can, but how can we really get all that global energy together to do more, to make the change faster? Because it is happening, and at the same time, there's a ton of oppression out there. Yes. And I was just in India a couple weeks ago, and it's very uneven, the sort of women's rights movement. So whatever we can do and ideas that all of you have, I'm very open to joining and trying to figure out what sort of things we can do to help women around the globe.
Thank you. It's great. Thank you so much.
I'm going to look at this a little differently from the standpoint of being engaged, because I think that first of all, we have to be willing to ask for what we want, and then be willing to work on it to make it happen. And when I look at where we've come from, I look at taking advantage of the technology that gives us the freedom and flexibility. I just think about when my son was young and going to one of his events and coming home and having to get on the internet to get caught up on what I missed during the day, and now I have the technology with me that follows me, and it takes away a lot of that. It allows me to be a little bit more freedom too, because everything is mobile. So I think that if we take advantage of the technology that gives us the freedom, it frees us up to ask for things and to do things that are beneficiary for us. After all, this is Women's History Month.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
That's right. That's right.
I mean,
we have a history.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I totally agree. And I would just build on that by saying, since we do have these privileged choices and this incredible power, combine the fact that women use social media 40% more often than do men, and we have the benefit of the First Amendment protecting what we blog, tweet, write, and say. So I would just say, take your time between meetings with the principal, I was probably in the next room over, and your busy jobs, and follow amazing, new, brave, terrifyingly brave women, like the Afghan Women's Writer's Blog, or the Muslim Media Watch, or Global Voices Online. And if you see something or somebody saying something that you believe in or care about, get onto social media and tweet it out. That's your broadcast medium. You don't have to have a blog. It turns out, I would say, there is a great new app that I've recently found that allows me to post things to Twitter and to LinkedIn at the same time, called Buffer. What? Buffer. Buffer.
Doesn't Hootsuite do that too?
Hootsuite will do that as well. So I'm not trying to pick one technology. But if time efficiency and supporting of causes is what you're looking for, and you don't want to necessarily post everything to your personal Facebook, and you don't have time to write a blog, there are all kinds of options to do exactly what you were saying as your...
Right, and those of you who don't think you have a platform, if you have a Facebook page, you have a platform. Yes. So it's just, I love that. Go looking at these places and these blogs that we don't normally see or even look for. And maybe there's a way you can provide more of those names for us so that people can.
Oh, sure.
That would be.
I mean, because I hear all the time, I'm so busy, I'd love to help. I don't know where to start or what to do. And for heaven's sake, I'm already working 120 hours a week. But just that tweet
It's great.
makes such a difference.
Tweet it. One last really quick question. I'd like each of you, and if you can make it brief, it'd be great. What is the one piece of advice that you wish your younger self had known? Who wants to start? I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know if you knew we were doing that one.
I wish that I would have understood. I was defined by the power structure. I grew up. My dad was a really huge, important part of my life, and he was a very experienced and successful businessman. And I had to follow in his tracks, and I needed to be, I needed to follow the corporate ladder, and I needed to do all that. And I wish that I had found myself and my confidence and my what I exist for, my voice, a whole lot earlier. So
it's great.
Mine is really similar. It's really be your authentic self and give yourself a break.
Beautiful.
And I would say that it's never too soon or too late to stretch yourself and to take advantage of what's out there.
Great.
Amen. And in order to find time to do that, I recommend you remove toxic people from your life.
yeah.
So I just want to say, wow, I feel like I just went to a rich feast, just a smorgasbord of delicious stuff that we can all chew on and take home and spread the word about and tell other people. So thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. I hope you all stay as long as you can today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Find a seat and all.